sparks leaping from rooftop to rooftop as the great fire raged uncontrolled through the city. The heat was suffocating, the sky an apocalyptic orange. And yet amid the chaos, there was something wrong. The fire was spreading too efficiently, strategically, almost guided rather than accidental. Mara quickly realized that history recorded the blaze as catastrophic, but ultimately transformative, clearing plague-infested districts and forcing the city to rebuild stronger in stone. But the coordinates on the stolen transmitter led them toward a riverside warehouse where cloaked figures were quietly ensuring certain buildings burned while others were spared. Hidden behind stacked crates, Ethan overheard a chilling exchange. The organization wasn't trying to stop the fire. They were calibrating it, preserving specific archives, protecting certain bloodlines, and eliminating rivals whose descendants would one day challenge their control. Meaning London's very rebirth had been subtly engineered centuries ago to produce a future favorable to them. As the warehouse doors burst open from a collapsing beam, Ethan and Mara confronted the hooded leader for the first time. A composed man who introduced himself not with a name, but a philosophy, claiming his order had existed across generations to optimize civilization, nudging disasters to prevent worse catastrophes, altering survival just enough to steer humanity towards stability. He revealed that the temporal fractures weren't accidents, but consequences of Ethan and Mara interfering with a design that had been balanced for centuries, and that the coming erasure of London was not punishment, but recalibration, if the city's evolution no longer served equilibrium. It would simply be rewritten elsewhere in history. Mara refused to accept that morality could be reduced to calculation, and as flames closed in around them, Ethan triggered the transmitter to expose the organization's presence to the very chaos they sought to control, forcing their operatives to retreat while critical supply routes and records burned naturally as history intended. The warehouse collapsed in a storm of sparks, the leader vanishing into smoke with a final warning that time always favors architects over rebels. And as the inferno roared unchecked in its authentic, unmanipulated fury, Mara recalibrated the device using the transmitter's data, realizing that the true origin of the reset lay not in 1666, but in the moment. The organization first mastered temporal awareness somewhere beyond recorded history. As the fire's glow began to distort into white light, and another jump pulled at them, Ethan understood the stakes had changed once more. They were no longer merely preventing London's erasure, but dismantling a centuries-old system that believed humanity was a blueprint to be edited. And if they failed in the final confrontation, time itself would no longer belong to chance or choice, but to control. The final jump did not tear them sideways through fire or war, but dropped them into a silence so complete it felt pre-human. And when Ethan's vision cleared, he realized they were standing on the banks of the Thames long before London bore its name. No towers, no bridges, only mist rising from dark water and the distant glow of primitive settlement fires flickering beyond the trees. Mara's device pulsed violently, confirming what she feared. This was the origin point. The moment centuries ago when the first architect of the organization had discovered the anomaly in time's flow, a natural fracture beneath this land that made it uniquely sensitive to temporal influence. London had not merely grown powerful by chance, it had formed over a fault line in reality itself. Emerging from the fog, the hooded leader appeared again, older and strangely calm, revealing that his order began when an ancient scholar observed that certain catastrophic events could be subtly redirected to produce stronger civilizations, and that by anchoring their influence to this geographic anomaly, they learned to make precise, minimal alterations, saving one life, destroying another, nudging a decision, believing the ends justified the invisible manipulation. He argued that without their interventions, plagues would have spread farther, wars lasted longer, tyrants risen unchecked, and that the renaissance of ideas, the Industrial Revolution, even the survival of London during invasions and bombings were all partially optimized by unseen hands. Ethan, standing on untouched earth that would one day hold skyscrapers, finally understood the terrible elegance of it. They were not villains in the traditional sense, but custodians who had mistaken control for responsibility. convinced that humanity's chaos required correction. Mara stepped forward and revealed the flaw in their philosophy the more they adjusted events. The more unstable the timeline became, creating cumulative distortions that now demanded a catastrophic reset. Their optimization had reached diminishing returns. The coming erasure of London was time's attempt to free itself from centuries of interference. The leader offered Ethan a choice. Join them, inherit the architecture of time, and guide the reset to preserve what he loved. Or destroy the anomaly entirely and allow history to unfold without design, risking unpredictability on a global scale. As the sky shimmered with overlapping versions of future Londons, some prosperous, some ruined, Ethan made his decision not from logic, but from belief. Seizing Mara's recalibrated device and driving its core into the riverbank where the anomaly pulsed invisibly beneath the soil. Energy surged outward in a blinding wave, severing the geographic anchor that had enabled temporal manipulation for centuries. The hooded leader dissolved into distortion, along with his network's connection to time, and the visions of alternate futures collapsed into a single, uncertain horizon as the anomaly stabilized into ordinary reality. When Ethan awoke back in present-day Greenwich, the city lights of London glowed steady against the night sky. Digital systems restored, no spiral fractures across the Thames, and no record of the shadow organization ever existing beyond scattered myths of unseen hands guiding history. Mara stood beside him, exhausted, but smiling faintly, aware that the future was now unwritten in the truest sense, messy, fragile, unpredictable, and as Big Ben's clock struck the hour with its familiar echo. Ethan felt something he had never felt during the crisis, not synchronization with the timeline, but freedom from it, knowing that London would survive not because it had been engineered to, but because humanity would rise and rebuild on its own terms, without architects deciding which moments deserved to burn. In the weeks that followed, London returned to its familiar rhythm, traffic humming across bridges, digital billboards blazing over Piccadilly Circus, the Thames reflecting glass towers like nothing had ever threatened to erase them, but Ethan could feel the difference in subtle, almost philosophical ways, as though the city's pulse no longer carried the faint mechanical precision it once had. News archives showed no blackout, no 72-hour countdown, no record of a temporal anomaly. And Dr. Mara Ellison officially remained a respected physicist whose controversial theories had never required disappearance or secrecy. Yet both of them retained memories of burning centuries, fractured skies, and a choice that had unfastened history from invisible hands. Without the anomaly anchoring manipulation, small changes began to ripple naturally. An unexpected election result, a scientific breakthrough emerging from an overlooked lab in Manchester, diplomatic tensions resolving without quiet interference, unfolding not toward optimized stability, but toward organic unpredictability. And although global systems trembled at first under the absence of subtle corrections, humanity adapted the way it always had, imperfectly but resiliently. Ethan returned to his work at the grid with a deeper awareness of fragility, noticing how infrastructure, like time, depended on countless independent parts cooperating without a central architect dictating every spark. While Mara began publishing her research openly, arguing that the universe thrived not on control, but on probability and choice. Critics called her theories abstract, but she understood their deeper truth. Occasionally, Ethan would stand at Greenwich on quiet evenings, watching tourists straddle the Prime Meridian line, unaware that the ground beneath them once hid a fracture capable of rewriting existence, and he would wonder whether destroying the anomaly had truly freed history, or merely shifted responsibility entirely onto human hands. One night, as Big Ben's chimes echoed across the river, Mara joined him and admitted that removing temporal manipulation did not eliminate danger. It simply meant humanity would now face its crises without unseen calibration. That uncertainty was the essence of growth. As lights shimmered across London's skyline, brighter and more chaotic than ever, Ethan realized the city's survival no longer depended on optimization or secret guardians. It depended on billions of decisions made every day by ordinary people unaware of the vast, invisible war that had once raged beneath their streets. And in that realization, he felt something more powerful than synchronization with time. He felt trust in it, knowing that the future, no matter how turbulent, would now belong entirely to those brave enough to shape it without rewriting it.